All right, how's everybody doing so far?
Great.
It's been a long day. I'm not going to sit here and preach and teach. I don't know if you're going to get actually motivated or educated or even inspired, because I'm not here to do that. I'm just going to tell you my story. It all started when I was 15 years old. Everybody was 15 years old once, right? Okay. I was 15 years old. One of my friends calls me, God rest his soul. His name is Gordy. I'll tell you how he basically killed himself later on. Calls me up, he goes, hey, MJ, I'm going to come pick you up in about 10 minutes. 15 years old, how are you going to come pick me up? So he pulls up with a 1986 Mustang LX convertible. So we get in the car, we go cruise around, go to Kingsway Garden Mall. Everybody know where Kingsway Garden Mall is? Yeah, go to Kingsway Garden Mall, shopping, pick up some girls. We're all having a good time. We go outside. I sit in the passenger side. He sits in the driver's side. We get in the car. We start driving. And then bang, right out of nowhere, cops all over us. We're under arrest. Gordy didn't tell me that he actually stole the car. I'm just getting goosebumps for a minute. Gordy didn't tell me that he actually stole the car. So this was my first introduction to prison, which was EYOC, the Edmonton Young Offender Center. I've always been a tough guy. I've always been strong. I was raised, and I still am being raised, in a Middle Eastern family. So if you're familiar with Middle Eastern, they're very strict. They don't call it abuse, they call it discipline. Yeah, exactly. So I was very tough. I didn't look this good back then. I was actually soaking wet, about 93 pounds. But I had this anger that I could, pretty much lift a building with. Later on in my life, I learned where this anger came from. And this is one thing that I actually had to learn and accept, just like some of the speakers today told you. You have to own it. You have to own your anger. You have to own your happiness. You have to own everything that came into your life, because you know what? We all brought it onto us. We did, believe it or not. If you actually were in an abusive relationship, you put out that energy. We did. Once you learn how important energy is, as Jaden was just saying to us, it's very dangerous. It's actually very scary to find out how powerful we are once we learn how to manifest what we put in here. So back to the story, we get arrested, and here I am, 15 years old. I'm going to have to stay in jail. What the hell am I going to tell my parents? So I disappeared for 2 days, and then I showed up. Of course, when I showed up at home, I had my pager. I had $2,500 worth of drugs in my pocket, and I had about $1,700 cash, and a cellular phone back in those days. Who had a cellular phone back in those days? Nobody. Only drug dealers did. So I knocked the door at 11:30, and my father answered, and he said, where have you been? I can't tell him I was in jail. I said, I was at my friend's. He goes, you were at your friend's? Yeah, okay. Then you can go and leave. Go back to your friend's place. 15 years old, November 13th. I will never forget that day. It was minus 31 below. Where am I going to go? I had money, but I can't go to a hotel. 15 years old. They ask you for ID. So I slept in the garage, and my sister actually found out that I was sleeping in the garage, so she snuck a blanket and a pillow to me. And that's when my cycle began of just absolute destruction. I didn't love myself. I didn't care about myself. Because obviously if I did, I wouldn't be where I was. So I continued my cycle, and I figure out that I wanted to be stubborn. And I still am to this day. I still have a tough time dealing with my ego. I'm much better now. But my ego at that time basically said, hey, you know what? Screw 'em. You could do this. You could do it on your own. So I got a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper in the organized crime. I became involved in gangs. I became involved in collecting money. I became involved in fighting on the street for money. And then I went in a couple of other times until pretty much the last time. The last time was the big one. I was never the type of person to stay in a room for more than 5 minutes. As you can see, I can't even stop pacing. I couldn't even sit still for 5 minutes, never mind be in prison. So I got sentenced to 3 years in prison. At that time, I was just absolutely lost. I was destroyed. Make a long story short, I became more and more violent than I already was, to the point where I actually had to be segregated for 16 months in a cell, 23 and a half hours locked up. One day, I would get a half-hour exercise, and the other day, I would get a half-hour shower. Now, what I want you to take home from this is, the key word is refocus. When you think your life is bad, okay, it's not. Somebody else's. I refocused again today, listening to all of your stories. And when I think that my life is actually going to shits, it's not. So when you think your life is going to shits, imagine going to prison, in maximum security prison, where 65% of your serving inmates are doing life, which means they'll take your life just like that, because they're not getting out. So if there's one thing I want you to take away today, it's called refocus. Thank you.
Cool.